So one of the most common videos that people request are the defensive use of a firearm videos. And a lot of these, I don't do a lot of them because a lot of the stories aren't very interesting and there's not enough there to do a whole video on. So I decided I was going to go through, and I looked back in the last week. There's been at least a dozen that I could find of defensive use incidents, and I got 8 of them that the stories are at least halfway decent. So I'm going to go through, and we're just going to kind of go through 8 of them. And if this is something that people are interested in and want to see more of, I will do more videos like this because it's easier and kind of better to do a bunch of them together as opposed to just doing one here and there. So the first one is at a bar nightclub called El Patio in San Antonio, Texas. And this was about 2 guys that had gotten kicked out of a bar for fighting and returned and started shooting from across the street, and a security guard got into a shootout with the 2 guys. And basically it says police are investigating a shooting outside a bar on the city's west side that left 1 man hospitalized and another man flee the scene after the incident. According to the police, they responded to a shooting in progress call. 2 suspects left the West Side bar after being separated for a fight with other individuals at the venue. The 2 suspects then returned to the location with guns and opened fire on the bar from across the street. The security guard at the venue reportedly returned fire, striking one of the suspects. After EMS was called and made it to the scene, the injured suspect was transported to the local hospital where he is in stable condition. The second suspect fled. So that's something that happens a lot. And if you watch Ock Nation, you know that he always talks about that these guys are asked to leave and they come back and they shoot up the place. So that's one that happens kind of often. At least the security guard wasn't hurt and he managed to strike one of the suspects. Okay, now at a Walmart in Hermitage, Tennessee, we have both the victim and the suspect's name. Tierra Mowbray was the victim, and the suspect was Tristan Walker, and he was killed by her. This was a road rage incident. These 2 were on the road, and she was apparently, I'm going to pull this up, she was apparently tailgating the guy. And then he apparently brake checked her, and then she apparently did the same to him, and they went back and forth quite a bit, from what it sounds like, with the road rage stuff. And then they both pulled over into a Walmart parking lot. Walker then, the guy that got shot, he got out of his vehicle and he approached her car. She started firing. She fired 1 shot at him, struck him in the chest. He died. So this one is they're calling a little messy as far as the defensive use goes. And an attorney says, there are certain conditions that must be met in order to claim self-defense under the law. First, there must be a reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily injury. Next, there must be a true belief the threat of imminent harm or death is real. And finally, that belief must be supported by the facts. And the manner that he approached, what was he saying as he approached? What was she saying to him as he approached? These are the facts that go into reasonableness or fear that you are in imminent harm or you are in a threat of imminent harm. So that's the attorney says that. If the above criteria is met, the law does not require a person to attempt to retreat or leave the location before defending themselves. This is something that actually happens a lot too, is this road rage stuff. And everybody's done that, where somebody's just making you mad and you do something stupid. And I completely stopped doing that. I used to when I was younger. I completely stopped doing that. I do not trust anybody on the roads when it comes to my life and the fact that pretty much anybody when they're driving could pull out a gun and shoot you. So this happens a lot. I don't understand. I would never follow the person and then into a Walmart parking lot and then like try to approach them. I would never personally do that, but people do that all the time. And oftentimes nowadays, especially, this is the end result. Somebody ends up dying because somebody shoots them. And on a lot of the cases, it's kind of more justified. This one, the way it reads is a little iffy because the guy didn't have a gun. He just got out and he walked to talk to her. With everything going back and forth, it sounds like she was just as bad in the road rage as he was, admittingly on both parts. The guy had his girlfriend in the car with him, and the girlfriend told the story, and the girl that shot this guy, she told the story, and the stories were relatively the same. They had gone back and forth while they were driving, doing stupid road rage stuff. And she may be in some trouble on this one because she was just as at fault, and he wasn't, unless he came off, yelling something very threatening to her. He got out to talk to her. I don't know how that one goes. So let's go on to this one. Happened at Frank's Liquor in Cold Spring, Texas. And this is another one where the suspect was killed, Jeffrey Vance Gunter. He was 21. And let's see. According to San Jacinto County Sheriff Greg Capers, a burglary suspect was fatally shot inside the store by the store owner. The sheriff's office dispatch received a 911 call approximately 5:20 a.m. from a male stating that his business, Frank's Liquor, was actively being burglarized. Deputies arrived on scene moments later and found the alleged burglar lying on the floor of the business with a single gunshot wound. Investigators processed the scene and reviewed surveillance camera footage that showed the subject entering the closed business through a drive-through window. The footage then showed the subject moving around inside the liquor store and placing cigarettes and bottles of liquor inside a bag before moving to the back storage room. The subject entered the store and happened upon the store owner, who had slept in the business overnight. The store owner was surprised to wake up to see the person standing there. The store owner began checking the business. As the store owner came across the storage room, he observed the subject in the back room and yelled out. The subject appeared to be rapidly moving towards the owner. At the time, the store owner discharged one round from a 9mm handgun, striking the subject, causing him to fall to the ground. So this store owner was sleeping in his business. And I don't know this city, I don't know the crime stats of this city, but I know like in places like Portland and San Francisco and a lot of places like that, a lot of business owners are sleeping in the businesses these days because they have to protect their business. The cities aren't protecting their businesses, so these people feel like they need to sleep in the business, and they basically live there because they can't leave it, because it's not safe, because the laws are not putting people in jail. And the laws aren't protecting them, is what I meant to say, but they're not putting these people in jail. And especially over on the West Coast, where you can steal up to like $950 or something like that and basically get a slap on the wrist, there's more criminals. So let's move on to Chicago, Illinois, because you can't do a video without Chicago. So this one had a 59-year-old victim at the First Bank. This one I got a picture of the suspect for. Shots were fired during a bank robbery in the Loop, but no serious injuries were reported. Chicago police responded to a shots fired and bank robbery in progress at the Fifth Third Bank at 3 p.m. Witnesses reported seeing cash flying in the streets and bullet damage to the bank's exterior. Officers at the scene said the bank robber fired shots and bank security guard returned fire. According to a sergeant who spoke with the EMS crew at the scene, the guard may have received minor injuries to his hand from broken glass. Chicago police surveillance camera operators who reviewed footage described the suspect as a black male wearing a black coat, red hat, blue jeans, and carrying a bag. So this is, guy robs a bank and the security guard shoots back. Let's go to Toutie, Washington. This one, the victim was a teenager and the suspect was killed, but I do not have a name. A juvenile resident called 911 to report that they had fatally shot a man on their property. The resident did not know the man, but the juvenile felt threatened when the man came onto the property. The resident said the man was behaving erratically and harassing the dogs. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found the man dead. Okay, well, the guy came onto their property and this kid shot him. All right, this one's in Tacoma, Washington. This is the one with Sean Kemp, that NBA player. I don't really know much about him. I don't watch the NBA. But he's 53 years old now, so he's a good, at least probably 20 some years past his NBA prime. He had apparently gone to retrieve his property from people inside a vehicle, and they all just started shooting at each other. And he was arrested and booked for a drive-by shooting. That's about all I got on that one. And then let's move on to Battle Creek, Michigan. This one had a 40-year-old suspect was killed, Donald Richie Guthrie. Subject forced his way into apartment. Let's see what happened with this one. A 40-year-old Fulton man was killed inside an apartment in what police are calling a self-defense shooting. The man is accused of breaking into an apartment at Georgetown Estates. Officers responded to a distress call at an apartment complex at 9:41 p.m. and found Donald Richard Guthrie had been shot. Guthrie was transported to the hospital where he later died. It appears that Guthrie had forced his way into the victim's Georgetown Estates apartment, at which time the victim shot Guthrie. At this time, it appears that the victim acted in self-defense. Again, that's another thing that's starting to happen more. So we got this last one. Yeah, this is the last one. Okay, New Orleans, Louisiana. The victim, Denzel Peters, 26 years old, and the suspects were two teenagers, 14 years old, and they were not injured. But this one's getting a little dicey because, okay, so these kids were breaking into this guy's car. And he was arrested because he shot one of them and he hit one of the 14-year-old kids and he got arrested. Court records show 26-year-old Denzel Peters was booked with aggravated battery, illegal use of a weapon, and obstruction of justice. Peters appeared Wednesday afternoon in Orleans Parish Magistrate Court, where his bond was set at $42,500. New Orleans police said video evidence showed a person emerging from a house and firing several shots toward a stolen vehicle occupied by three people who appeared to be attempting to break into Peters' black Dodge Charger. Police said a 14-year-old sustained several gunshot wounds before the stolen car sped away and crashed. The NOPD said the wounded 14-year-old and a second juvenile also faced charges related to the incident and displayed weapons, ammunition, cell phones, and narcotics that were seized after a search warrant. They were driving at the time a stolen Kia Optima, which we all know you should never buy a Kia because they all get stolen. And basically they looked at the video footage and they arrested the guy who shot the people stealing his car, even though they all had a bunch of guns on them. So the self-defense stuff, if you're going to do it, you need to make sure you're in a place that allows you to defend yourself. New Orleans the homicides and shootings they're out of control this year. Well, in the last, for a while actually. But, if you need to know where you're at. States like Florida, you're fine. Defend yourself. You're covered. And even like states like Texas. But some of these states, it gets kind of iffy. I still think we need more of this. But because in this incident, the guy the kids didn't fire back at the guy. It was just the guy shooting at them, and he was shooting at them from his porch, and they were in the car. So there wasn't really an immediate threat. He was shooting to stop them from stealing his car. I don't know the law on that. That's kind of a little iffy, but this guy's got himself in a little bit of trouble. But so those were 8 incidents. And as a whole, they're probably worth listening to. I don't know if any one of them was interesting enough to make its own video, so that's why I did it this way. And again, if this is something that you're interested in seeing more of, I will do more like this, where they're larger videos that include a bunch of them, like do a whole week's worth. This was 8 of 12 that I had found for this week. The other 4 were, there really was no story to them. I mean, some of them didn't even sound like they were self-defense stories. They called it self-defense, but it was just, it was whatever. So anyway, well, that's all I got for you today. If this is something you're interested in, leave a comment, and I will try and do one of these like on a weekly basis.